Hey guys, it's Lewis from SwapHelper.com, Nintech Corporation, out here with our 2001 Ford Excursion that we use for development, socially distancing, as I'm sure the rest of you guys are as well. I wanted to share with you guys the second revision of the SwapHelper.com Cluster Helper. I'm excited to announce pre-ordering to open today. This will be for the 99 to 2001 Ford Super Duties and Excursions. So let's jump right into it. Let me get in the truck and show you what it does. So before I plug the cluster helper in, I wanted to go over quickly how it's going to connect. You will receive a wiring harness with this connector that will connect to the cluster helper, and it'll have the wires coming out, and you're going to wire into the original wiring harness for the cluster. You will solder the wires directly in. Do not look at this as a bad example using T-taps. I did this temporarily because I didn't want to cut these connectors off until I film an entire installation video going wire by wire showing you how to wire this in. So that's what you're going to receive. Each wire will be labeled with its corresponding OE wire color and wire position on the cluster helper, and as much information as possible to assist you in properly installing the cluster helper. So let's get on to plugging in the cluster helper and the cluster. Alright, I've connected the cluster helper and have it connected to this 2010 cluster out of a King Ranch. Now, one thing I want to point out that I always do in these videos is that this is a completely unmodified stock cluster, and just to show, I brought another cluster out of an XL or an XLT, which I will plug in and show you that the cluster helper is cluster agnostic. As long as you have a 2008 to 2010 cluster, it will work. We will get into the 2011 to 2016 clusters at some point, but right now 2008 to 2010, and we also have the 2002 to 2007 Ford trucks under development. It's going to take some time. We're putting that behind the column helper, which is also in development, which will do, as previously mentioned, everything with the multifunction switch, the ignition, all that kind of good stuff. But just as a reminder, here's the original cluster, and look at that 2010. God, it's so much better looking. It was really my motivation when I bought that 2010 dash. I just could not have that older cluster in there during the swap. So with that, let me go ahead and fire it up. Okay, before we go for a spin, and sorry I got the AC blowing full blast. I am in Houston, Texas, and it is warm outside, so pardon that. But so as I mentioned earlier, we've got the column helper, and part of the reason we've extended the shipping deadline for the cluster helper pre-orders, we could probably get them out sooner, but I really want to get the complementary products available at the same time, so that way when you go to swap your dash, you have a really nice clean install top to bottom. So we've got the column helper, like I said, that's going to handle the ignition, the multifunction switch, the hazards, the cruise conversion, all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing we're working on. The other one is the headlight helper, and what it's going to do is obviously make the 2008 to 10 and maybe 11 to 16, and we may, same thing with the column, we may try to cover all of them in one shot, but we don't know yet. But it'll obviously make the lights work, but the big thing is going to make the dimmer work like it originally did. So those two products, I want those to be available at the same time that we ship the pre-orders for the cluster helper. So I just wanted to touch on that beforehand. One thing I wanted to touch on regarding the cluster helper, column helper, headlight helper is that they will all be designed so that they can operate independently. If you want to keep your old cluster and you just want to run our column product, that will be an option. If you have your old column or a different column and you'd like to continue to run that and just want to run the cluster, you'll be able to do that. And if you want to run both the old column and cluster and just want our headlight set up, you'll be able to do that. Basically, you don't have to buy all three, but you can buy them, of course, and they will all work together for the most optimum dash swapping experience. So I just wanted to touch on that point and interject that here in this video. So with that, let's go ahead and go for a spin. I'll put my seatbelt on. Well, actually, I'll show you if we put it in gear. Seatbelt light. All right, on my seatbelt. So the blinkers, all that kind of stuff, hazards, everything works. Now, last time you may remember that the speedometer, we had some issues with it because it was the first design. This being a second revision, it's all been hashed out and works great. Go ahead and turn on the cruise. I'll actually going up to the stop sign. Now that screen may look like it's rolling through or flashing or whatever, but that's because of the refresh rate. It looks perfect in person, but if you see that, that's why. But let me get on it. Let me pull over, and I'm going to get this XL cluster and go ahead and swap it out and show you that it works with a different cluster. So give me just a minute to knock that out. Okay, so here's I think this was out of a 2008 XL or XLT cluster. Again, it's stock, you know, unmodified, and it is connected to the cluster helper. So since this one doesn't have the message center, we can actually just scroll through here, take a look at everything. So I've reset the trip to 0 miles. Range sensor, everything works like it's supposed to, and of course we got 2 and 1. As I mentioned in the previous video, there is no 3 on a 2001 Ford Excursion, so that's why we don't have that available. But let's go drive around with this cluster. So as you can see, the trip, everything works. We've got the second trip, which we can reset. Sorry, trying to drive and film is not the easiest thing to do. Sorry about that glare. So as you can see, everything works like it's supposed to on both clusters. I actually have a few more clusters, including a manual cluster out of a manual truck, which was kind of hard to find, but I went searching and found one. And the voltmeter works in place of the transmission temp, just like it's supposed to. So you know, we're pretty much ready to go. We've just got to tool up for production. Some of the things that we still need to finish are the mechanical enclosure design, which will be it'll be in an enclosure, and we're working on exactly how to mount that under the dash and where the best spot is. So those are some of the things we're going to button up. Obviously, we've got to get the wiring harnesses built, get everything ready to go, and if you place a pre-order, you will receive ongoing updates. They will be emailed. If anybody happens to be in the Houston area and would like to do some early pre-production, possibly install on their truck, shoot me an email, contact@swaphelper.com. But bottom line, we're super excited about this. This is going to be a lot of fun getting these dashes to work properly with the clusters and the columns and headlights and everything else. And we're really looking forward to getting everybody set up. So any questions, you can put it in the comments, or the best thing to do is shoot us an email, contact@swaphelper.com. Thanks for your time.